I wonder if we're gonna meet.
You water skiing?
No.
I was tubing on Saturday and I couldn't move for a couple.
And I.
Not really.
I started trying.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. I think I fall more into the sitting in the chair wine drinking than the out on the tube behind a boat girl.
I say lawn chair and drinking.
Chair drinking, not boating and tubing.
In my name.
Like
Yeah.
in the.
So just
But yeah, I just put it in the wrong one.
I can get- July the 26th, 2023. We respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the unceded traditional territory of this. Approval of the agenda. Approval of the agenda that the pump track update be removed from the agenda. And recommendation that the committee of the whole meeting agenda for July 26, 2023 be approved as amended. Counselor McCabe, Counselor Rich, all in favor, carried. Okay, adoption of the minutes, recommendation that the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting held on June 28th, 2023 be adopted. Counselor Bushel, Counselor Beach, all in favor, carried, thank you. Okay, we're going to go into delegations. We're going to start with the Sycamus RCMP Detachment Quarterly Report, and that's going to be presented by Corporal Andrew McLean, who is replacing Sergeant Murray until mid-September. Corporal McLean is now part of our detachment. He is replacing Corporal Wade Fisher, so he is new to Sycamus and part of our community now. So let's welcome Corporal McLean. Woo!
Everyone, Mayor and council. So maybe because I'm new here and nobody's really met me, I'll just start with the Corporal Andrew McLean. Promoted transfer here to Sycamus detachments as of May 15th. And replaced prior to that, living in Salmon Arm, RCMP for the last 100 years. I did 8 years of dental rehabilitation there, and the last 2 years I was here. Live in Banner, married family, the builder is 17, so we love living in the true swap and the family area. So I guess with that, I'll get started into the presentation here of the quarterly report. Sergeant Murray McNeil has asked me to present it on his behalf as he is when I work with Century's off until mid-September as far as being at home, and then after that he'll be just in office like 2 weeks people. I am the acting sergeant in his place at this time for duty. So the second detachment has identified 3 priorities, objectives for this fiscal year. Number 1 is contributing to road safety, and Sergeant McNeil has identified that he is looking for 10 traffic stops from each member per month, average, to try and help with that road safety. The second one is police visibility in the downtown area of the beach parks and on the lakes. So that includes foot patrols, vehicle patrols, and then boat patrols on the lake. And then the third one is communicating effectively, and that includes meeting with outside agencies. So that will be probation, because we have a number that is higher than normal as far as people in the 6 months detachment area that are on other house arrest probation. So we've been working with them on monitoring these people and conducting the curfew checks on them. The second is media releases for incidents that occur in our area, and the third is
Voting in progress.
Number 1. And on the you see there the one product so that define numbers more the package here, that's like the but it's on per. One thing of note in that, if we scroll in further, there is the impairs. So for that's quarter of April to June 2022, we only had 3 impaired driver files, whereas this year we have 12. So there's been a substantial increase with that, and the majority of those I will say is 24-hour driving impaired by drugs. So there's been a significant spike in that, but we are controlling and dealing with that and trying to put that down. But, yeah. On visions, we had 2 injury cases during that period. On June 23rd, we had on Highway 97A, the barrier minor injuries. And then on June 27th, we had a single vehicle rollover on the highway near the street. Drivers found it prohibited when driver's license insurance tickets were issued and given report for prohibited minor injuries in that crash. Break and enters. May 20th, there was a fence cut in Bear Creek campground compound, shed open with some was taken. No suspects today. And then that took vehicles. On May 1st, we had a snowmobile stolen at one point. On May 29th, we had a pickup stolen from the job site near Creek campground. Keys were left in the vehicle. It was later recovered, abandoned. On June 19th, we had a stolen Mercedes from the owner of Bell Street. The vehicle was located the next day in the channel, submerged in the water by the Bell Street boat launch. The keys were in. You drive the vehicle, reported ICBC as suspicious because we got video from one of the houseboats showing someone intentionally high speed driving it, launching into the water, then first getting out to walk and play. So I've been reported and investigated. And then on May 2nd, little larger police incident involving a male in a truck at the 7-Eleven. This fell out of Lake Country. It was surrounded the insurance with possession of a stolen truck, which also led to other files within there. So I couldn't get that right. I was involved in getting things set. Good getting off the road. There's another file that I want to talk about this not on this list, and it's one that I have been involved with as the acting sergeant at that point. That occurred on June 19th, and I apologize for not getting this in your Murray and That's involved in incidents one. I know it's not in the town jurisdiction, but it's on the scene that everyone here is aware of the incident that happened. It kind of started in the St. Louis area and ended up there, and a lot of people were talking about it. I have since had representatives come from the community to talk with me, the detachment, about our police response and the situation and how they as a community would have dealt with that situation. They're in a little better how to deal with it. So I can't give a lot of details about the incident because there's criminal charges coming out of this out of Kelowna. That's where the incident started. And so I can't talk about a lot of the details yet. So it hasn't come before the court, so I can give you kind of a brief synopsis or summary as to what happened there. And there was a media release done on that giving out these details. So I'll start it in Kelowna. Email suicidal, making threats toward herself and toward police, and through investigation and some stuff and was coming back this way. The emergency response team, their team, or public man, call them SWAT, located her traveling southbound 97A, just departing out of St. Louis here, and we're able to get people each end able to hard lock container in, container, and then she turned into the Swansea Point residential subdivision. At that point, that's where we had the road closures, 97A was closed, and then Swansea Point got basically contained and locked down. So at that point, we dealt with highway closures, and a lot of people that lived in that area, maybe a little bit disgruntled that they couldn't get back to their residence or couldn't get out of the area. But at that time, we tried to explain to them that it's not an issue of safety to the public, but we need to contain this person, and the only way we can do that is by her blocking entrance and exit out of the Swansea Point subdivision. And in doing that, because we knew she was in there somewhere, but we didn't know where. So then we just kept narrowing in, and then a lot of public residents, they were seeing the emergency response teams walking around their police dogs. They didn't know what was going on. But as I explained to the residents after, we don't have time to go around knocking door to door and say, hey, there's something ongoing here. We have an active situation, an active threat that we as the police need to immediately contain. And which we did very successfully. Her vehicle was located down by one of the beaches, and the emergency response team went in, contained her, and took her into custody. And then at that point, everything was opened all back up. So the highway was shut down for approximately a couple hours while this was all happening, but it ended safely in that state of the hospital being dealt with the courts as to charges from that. So I guess I just want to bring that to everyone's attention. We can't really be going around knocking door to door, spending an hour, 2 hours, maybe to tell everyone that hey, something's going on. We have to deal with the threat first. And I think there's no real way for us to communicate this to the public. I know it was brought up about the alert stuff on your cell phones and coming out of Nova Scotia that was brought up with a couple of people. And I said, yes, I understand that as a tool that we can use, but because the public is not in a danger and no threats toward the public, I don't have the ability. So in dealing with that, if we contain her and ask everybody to wait inside their houses and wait out until word's been given that it's safe, and that is the best solution at this point. So, not sure what else I can add. Everybody wants to bring that to our attention, and we can know, as best we could. And if anyone has any questions on that, I can. So the next page here has shows some of the breakdown statistics on the different kinds of files. With that, for the quarter of April, May, and June for 2023, and just give you a comparison on those. I don't know if I need to go through all of them. Mayor, if you go through what all the totals are there, but I guess the thing I'm going to highlight on there, and I think it's on the next page, is the total calls for service. And that is in 2023 for that quarter, we only had 452 calls for service. So year before was 545. Sorry, the
No,
other way.
other way. Yeah.
This year is 545 calls versus last year. So that's a 25% increase in calls for those 2 months, and still dealing with the same amount of police resources to deal with that. So it has made us substantially more busy. The next thing I'll speak about is resources. So we currently have one constable off on parental leave as of today, actually. So he's off for between 3 to 6 months, hasn't been determined how long he must go. As I said earlier, Sergeant McNeil is off. So September, mid-September is part of the office, and then after that, they'll just be in late in the office until recovery. And then for Sergeant McNeil. And then the last section there is criminal code charges. So for that quarter, we had 8 criminal charges on different matters during the quarter. And those charges result of theft, criminal harassment, assault, probation, theft of stolen property, driving suspended. So with that, we finished presenting the quarter report that started as made here, and I guess at this point,
Thank you, Sergeant McLean, or sorry, Corporal McLean. Does council have any questions? Sorry.
For the gentleman who's off on paternity, will he, so we have 5, he's gone. Does someone come in to replace him, or we're down to 4?
we're down to 4. So that's 4 constables, and then plus myself as the corporal, and then we have constable reservists. So there is 5 of us actively working right now.
But it's at our, like our regular -1, or they brought someone in at okay, so we are, okay, thank you.
So when we're fully staffed with everything, we're at 7. Now we're operating at 5.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bushel.
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, Corporal and Andrew, I'm just going to ask, it's probably not your area. Just out at 2 Mile, just past, it's outside our boundaries. There's a little beach there, about 500 yards past the district boundaries. An encampment there starting to form. I'm not sure if you're aware of it, and just wanted to give you a heads up.
Yes, I was there Monday night.
Oh, were you? Okay. I wasn't.
We got a file through came through bylaws more, John Moore, regards to this. I attended there. There was no one there. I went through everything. There was nothing to show any identification of as to who was there. We're back on Friday. I'll try and follow up. But what, as I'm new here, who has jurisdiction over that? Like a standard, we have CFRE, who would look after that here?
We generally, the district puts out the order for the public works folks to go out and gather up the camp and dispose of it.
So even though it's just outside the actual district in Swansea Point area, then it would still be the district employees.
Yeah, I think even though that one is outside of our jurisdiction, and Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we'll still keep a close eye on it because it is just on the boundaries. Daryl?
Yeah, through the chair, I'll look into it. I'll talk to the CSRD and see how quick that would be, and if it's not, then we can jump on it.
Perfect, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Bush, I probably jumped in there.
No problem. I did file a complaint with the CSRD, but they told me it was below the high water mark, so this wasn't wasn't in their jurisdiction. So I just thought that was something new, so. Thank you.
Yes.
Interesting.
Back to us. Back to you, Daryl. Does anyone have any other questions? So I did get some calls on the incident at Swansea Point. We've got some staff that have family up there. So while the search was going on, they had cousins, families and friends in their homes. And social media is an interesting thing because, I mean, it went out wide in just a short period of time. And there was a lot of concerns. So the residents up there were quite frightened and wanted to get out and were not allowed to. So I just heads up for you. Yeah, no, that's okay.
The people were allowed to leave. They were allowed to come back. So, and I spoke with the community representative there, they come talk with me last week, and part of all of the hype about this was they have a Facebook group for the Swansea community. And people were posting all kinds of things that were really relevant and really relevant. And there were shot fires. All kinds of things that had nothing to do with the incident, but it just kept snowballing. And a lot of that came from this Facebook site, the residents just posting all this stuff. And that's caused a lot of fear that shouldn't have been there.
I love that technology, hey? Okay, anyone else have any questions? I guess we're good. Thank you very much for your presentation. Welcome to Sycamoose, and you need anything, we're here.
Very much, very council. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along. I just want to take a moment and just our MLA Greg Kylo is online joining us today. So I just want to send out a welcome to him and thank you for joining us. I don't know if he's on. Okay, good. All right, so we're going to move forward. Riparian area regulation. Angela Cameron, Senior Aquatic Habitat Biologist, Ministry of Lands and Resources Stewardship. She joins us virtually. Welcome, Angela. And just so that you are aware, our economic, not only is council here today, but some of our economic development directors are here as well and may have some questions for you at the end of your presentation. So welcome and take it away.
Angela, are you online?
Might be a short presentation.
I don't see her online. Maybe we can skip to the next one and try to reach out to her and see if. Yeah.
Okay, and who's presenting for the Sycamoose Narrows Active Transportation Crossing Feasibility Study? Ian Roth, Transportation Engineering for Urban Systems, and Mike Wong, Project Manager for Howie North America. And you guys are they online?
Yes, we are. Yep. Can you hear me okay there?
Excellent, thank you. And again, to you guys, we do have our ECDev board in the gallery, and they have a vested interest in this particular project as well. So you guys can, you have the floor. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. I'm just going to share my screen here with the slideshow. Okay. I trust you can all see that now.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you and welcome. Thank you for the the welcome. So yes, my name is Ian Roth and I'm a transportation engineer with Urban Systems. Previously supported the district with the Active Transportation Network Plan. And I'm joined by my colleague here, Mike Wong from Cowie, North America, who has provided much of the structural support and development for this project. So we'll try to kind of briefly go through some of the high level stuff here. So this project funded through the National Active Transportation Program, is looking at the feasibility of providing an active transportation crossing, connecting the main street in the downtown of Sicamous with the future rail trail that will run along the west side of the Narrows. Today, we wanted to present to you our initial option considerations and walk you through a bit of the concept process that's been undertaken to date, as well as give you at least an initial preliminary evaluation of the concept options, and to share, what type of costs and order of magnitude we're talking about. I think it's an opportunity that we would like to collect your input and feedback today that will help shape how we wrap up the feasibility study moving forward from here. So some of the initial option considerations. So when we think about active transportation and we think about bridges, a lot can probably come to mind. Certainly the aesthetics of a bridge can be quite iconic when it comes to the bridges that we see, throughout Canada and certainly throughout BC. We can think about, different types of aspects of the bridge and how, light or bold it looks and the different types of materials. Thankfully, the good thing about active transportation bridges is we're carrying people who are walking or cycling and not so much vehicles and large trucks. So these bridges tend to be slimmer and lighter looking in appearance, and they can create quite the landmark and attraction for communities. And they often tend to be expressive. They can connote, different visuals, and you can use different types of nighttime illumination. So there's a lot of things that kind of come into the details of this, but we won't get too far into that. We're going to stick high level and talk about some of the feasibility considerations of how could we make this happen. So there's 4 different types of structures that typically are investigated. First, starting with steel or concrete girder bridge structures. These tend to be the lowest cost and most affordable type of structures, typically with a span of 70 to 100 meters that's supported by columns. And as you can see from the example here in Banff, different columns to provide that structural support for the spans. It could accommodate pedestrians and cyclists. It would require piers within the water, which is certainly a concern when we think about the Sicamous Narrows from an environmental and archaeological perspective. But it does tend to be the most economical type of bridge, and so it often is considered as at least a first option. Then we move on to another form of a structure, which would be a tied arch bridge. With the span is typically in the range of 100 to 200 meters, could require in-water piers, but not always and not necessarily. It tends to have a very sleek design, and we've seen a few of these across Canada, including in New Brunswick here at the Fundy Discovery site. Does tend to be a bit more costly in nature, but again, it's a bit balanced with the fact that you can keep some of the work outside of the waterway. Third are cable stayed bridges, and there's a few of these, including in Edmonton, as well as the Esplanade Real pedestrian bridge in Winnipeg. These cable stayed bridges tend to be able to support longer spans, 200 or more meters. You can keep piers outside of the water, depending on where the main pier is situated. It does tend to provide a landmark feature, and the only consideration there is that the cost tends to be a bit higher. And cable stayed bridges are very common throughout Canada. We see them often as well for roadway bridges in the BC, in the lower mainland in particular. And then last but not least, there are suspension bridges. Again, the spans can be quite long. There's an example of the Columbia River Skywalk and Trail, which the Cowie team had developed and prepared the design for. So these, again, can be the piers kept mostly outside of the river and the waterway. It does tend to require more work on either side to suspend the structure with cables that pull back on either side of the land. So that can be a big consideration there. So these are, in summary, 4 types of bridges that we had an initial investigation and discussion with district staff, Scott Beeching, who I believe is away this week, but as well with Daryl and Jeremy Schwitz. So based on a review of these 4 types of options, and considering the constraints within the Sycamoose Narrows, we did move ahead to screen out the steel or concrete girder bridge from further review, and that was mostly because it would require in-water piers, and we know that the waterway is quite sensitive. It would also be difficult to achieve the height clearances that we would need, as well the archaeological significance of some of the areas underneath the water and on the approaches on the embankments was another concern that we know there's just going to be a lack of appetite for that type of bridge structure. So that does leave these 3 other options that we have explored further, and we'll get into a little bit more detail. So on the concept options, at least an initial plan view level, just to give you a sense of where we are looking at where the structure could be, we're essentially looking at this alignment across the bottom of the screen that connects the main walkway from the Main Street landing approach at the traffic circle, pretty much following the same alignment that the old highway bridge used to take here across the Narrows. The span would, of course, cross the Narrows, and it would land on the west side of the Narrows, up at the elevation, for the most part, at the existing old Spalmachine Road alignment and level. And then from there, there would be a connection. Right now, we've shown a potential rail trail connection that would follow kind of parallel to the water and come down to the rail trail height. This is really kind of draft, and I would say the alignment of that reconnection piece there could be many different options, but for now we've shown something in here to at least give us an initial sense of what could work, knowing that again the alignment of that trail connection could vary quite a bit as further design progresses. So I'm going to finish off my one slide here. So just to give you a sense of where we're looking from visually, on the left side picture here, this is our view west from the Main Street approach over to the Narrows. As we can see in the middle of the slide, we've got the Sycamoose, the district boat launch and mooring area for boats. That's something that would have to be considered in the design. And you can see this is in the middle photo, the rail trail alignment or the old rail trail bed, the slope at the bottom. We have the roadway, Old Spalmachine Road at the middle, and then we can see the size of the knoll and the mountain and the rock cut that was created for the roadway there in the first place. And the photo to the right showing, again, much of that bedrock material that exists on the west side. Our understanding is on this east side towards Main Street, it's more soils and fills and less bedrock. So understanding those ground conditions is pretty key as we think about the structure types going forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike, who's going to walk us through the options that have been sketched up so far.
Thank you, Ian. This was the exciting part of the project where we get to come up with many interesting options of how to cross the Narrows. There was many considerations we were looking at this time. The major ones were the hydraulic clearance. This is a major navigation channel with a large clearance, so making sure that we stay above that to allow the boats to pass under. Utilizing the rock on the west side of the west bank was a consideration on many of the options. Having your foundations founded on bedrock and anchored into bedrock is a good cost-effective options for one of these longer crossings. Working outside the perimeter, the wet perimeter for the Narrows was also an important key. All the options we've developed to stay outside of that. Then connection to the downtown and the trail network. Looking at our property impacts and trying to stay within the city-owned property as much as possible. But as you can see, a few options will be outside of that. And then also looking at construction impacts of trying to keep construction outside of downtown as much as possible and keep it onto the west side. So with those considerations, we came up with 5 different crossing options at this time, just at a high level, just to get an understanding of what a bridge could look like and the potential costs for it. So this is the first initial option that we came up with, which was definitely utilizing the bedrock on the west side of the Narrows. You can see this pylon base is on the switchback of the property, going up to the Shuswap Villas, and then anchored in above into the bedrock with a thrust block located down at Old Splomasheen Road. This is a landmark, would be a landmark structure, a unique structure for the district. But it would require easements and potential impacts on the adjacent properties. So this is kind of where we started. If you go to the next slide, we looked at revising it slightly. So this is a shorter tower. You can see the red line is the edge of the district's lands, so less impact. This could be refined through the different design stages to determine where we could anchor into that rock and place the tower. The benefit of having a single tower in this location is that most of the construction can happen on the west side of the property and avoid the work downtown. You can launch all from the west side. The other benefit of this is having, the single foundation founded on rock. So you get efficiencies with that foundation, and you're not having to build a large foundation in the softer soils on the east side. So this was the one tower option. So then we also looked at 2 tower options. So this is a cable stay bridge with 2 towers. This stays within the property impacts on the Main Street alignment. You also, all the above ground works is on city property. It would potentially need some easements for the soil anchors that extend past the property. You can see on the west side and potentially on the east side. It'll have shorter towers than the single tower option and shorter stay cables. So there's a little bit of cost efficiency within that, and constructability could be slightly easier. Most of the construction can occur above the waterway and outside the wetted perimeter. So that's a benefit of this option. So then we also looked at suspension bridge option, which is very similar to the cable stay option. The towers would be located at the same location with the bridge tying into Old Splomasheen Road. Again, you need anchor blocks at the back with some potential soil tiebacks outside of the district property. The benefit of this is you could construct this bridge using a high line, which connects across the top of the 2 towers. It's similar to what we did for the bridge and trail. So all the work and the construction materials can be supplied off that high line, and nothing needs to be supplied from below from the water. So you keep that waterway open throughout construction. The one thing on this option is we're approaching the length where we potentially need guide cables for wind and transverse loading to stabilize the bridge. So in that case, we would need some cables in the transverse directions that splay out. So then we'd have to look at what the property impacts would be for that. And you need an extra 4 anchor blocks for that option compared to the cable stay bridge. And then the last option we looked at was an arch bridge. This will most likely be the most expensive option out of these. Build an arch bridge, you'll either need to have temporary towers with stays to support during the construction as you build it out, or you can prefabricate the bridge on a barge and move it over and lift it in. The benefits of the arch option is it utilizes the rock on the west side to tie in that foundation, as well as all the bridge can be built on the district-owned property. So you don't have any easements required for any tying back in any of the cables. So those were the 5 options we've taken right now and looked at. We have summarized our evaluation of these conceptual options in terms of the foundations, the hydraulic clearances, the environmental impact in terms of in-water works, any connectivity differences, property impacts, constructability, operation and maintenance, and costs. At this high level, you can go to the next slide. Most of the options are fairly comparable. As you can see here, option 1A and B have benefits in terms of the foundation because the single tower is founded on that good bedrock on the west side, whereas the other options will have larger foundations in the softer soil, so will come at an additional cost, most likely. The hydraulics, environmental, and connectivity are all pretty similar at this high level between the options. Then property impact, the best one is the arch bridge, where the single tower cable stay, the shorter one, and the suspension bridge might have some smaller impacts on property, while the single tower larger cable stay option, showed the tower located off the district property. In terms of constructability, the arch bridge had the most difficult, is probably the most difficult to construct. So we're saying it's a little bit of a con on that option. And then operation and maintenance between all the options should be pretty similar. They're all cable and steel structures. So overall, we're saying cost, probably the best cost options for this kind of signature bridge would be the single tower cable stay bridge, the shorter option, or between the two tower cable stay and the suspension bridge. At this time, it's high enough level that we don't see that there's too much of a difference between those. And this is just our initial kind of look at the estimate for it. So with a 4 to 5 meter wide deck and 185 meter total length of the bridge, we were coming up with a deck area of about 925 meters. Typically, what we've seen for similar types of projects is around the $10,000, $15,000 per square meter, which comes up with a dollar per square meter or total construction cost for the structure of about 10 to 15 million. Then you add in the other costs, construction costs, deciding how much you want to do in approaches in terms of connectivity. You have about $1 million to $5 million. And then we're saying 10% for planning and engineering. So we're in the range of about 14 million to $22 million range. And we kind of put our best guess on here right now of where each of those options would kind of fall within it, but it would come down to furthering design and coming up with a bit more detailed cost estimates down the road.
Thanks, Mike. And I'll just jump in here to wrap up in terms of where we're going forward with the next steps here. So at this point, we're looking to incorporate the feedback from both district staff and from council here. We had a meeting or a workshop a few weeks ago with staff, and they advised us to bring this information to council for additional review and input on these conceptual options. Following this, we will be refining a preferred concept with detailed CAD drawings and Class D cost estimate, still a conceptual level, but more formalized, and then packaging that into our draft feasibility report. And that submission to come following this, as well as to finalize the feasibility report. And then the kind of question comes up is where do things go from here once the feasibility report is complete? There's usually several steps involved in terms of taking a project like this from planning through to design and construction. Certainly, not least is the funding aspect of it, but the next process would be going to a preliminary design level with these options and undertaking more technical investigations, which would progress into more of a functional design or 50% detailed design. And then again, working towards a 100% detailed design that is construction ready and has gone through all the permitting processes and approvals down that line. So again, I think at a high level, there's quite a bit of steps involved there. as well as just the time it takes to develop each of these preliminary design deliverables does take a bit of time as you go from preliminary rather to detailed design and tender and construction. So with that, that's kind of a summary of where we are to date, and we're happy to take any further questions or comments from yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Mike. Wow.
Number.
Council, any questions? Everybody's kind of just sitting back, taking a big breath. 14 to 22. Malcolm?
No, is it, does council have to come up with one option and then they focus more on that?
I think the next steps is us deciding exactly where we want to go or what we want to do. We're also going to UBCM in September looking for money. So I just want that to make that clear to the taxpayers that are all tuned in right now. I mean, there may not be no cost, but we're looking for money before we make any decisions, because this is, it's a huge project for Sycamoose. It's an iconic project for Sycamoose. And it is part of a bigger picture that's going to connect us to the rail trail, which connects all the way to the US border. So this is, it's a big project for sure. But it's an important decision that we have to make if we want to be part of the trail. Ian?
Just a question about where we are with, we had financing for the study. So if you could just go back a couple of slides or just what the next steps would be. I just want to know if that's funded in terms of what we've already had allocated to it. So like, where are we with that? This is the end of had funded and we have to put some more money to it right now? Just kind of whereabouts are we?
Yeah, so we're working to wrap up the funding that was provided from the grant for this feasibility study. Again, I would also say, just to go back to a comment that was shared there about in terms of selecting a preferred concept, I would say we're not at a point where we need to choose one concept or the other. I think there could be a couple preferred concepts, but in terms of our budget and scope for the study, we really have the scope to look at, maybe one in more detail. We could potentially look at two, just be in a little bit less detail, but we're not necessarily asking for you to choose which bridge you want. I think, there could be a couple options in there, and the next step of preliminary design, which would probably be its own project in itself with the funding and a scope around that. That would be the time that you would be looking at, okay, maybe we're at 2 or 3 options and let's look at them a bit further in detail. And then from that to determine the best design to move forward to a functional and detailed design level. It's a bit too early at this stage to say one option over the other is going to be best. But again, the evaluation helps point us to maybe one of 3 options rather than the 5 that could be explored in preliminary design. And that preliminary design would look at having a geotechnical investigation done, environmental investigation, and archaeological consultations, and started to get into more of the details and depths of how do we identify all the risks involved, and how do we start to get information to be able to resolve some of those things that are going to come up as the design progresses.
Go ahead, Councilor Bailey.
Yeah, just to follow up. So I guess what I'm getting at is, do you need more money to proceed right now? is my direct question, or do you still have a little bit of the budget in the pool to move this a little further along?
So no, we're essentially going to be out of budget once we wrap up the feasibility report. Yeah.
Okay, but you are still doing the feasibility report as part of the current budget.
That's correct. Yes. So it's the items below here on the bottom of the screen that aren't funded, but these next steps here to final feasibility report are funded. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Councilor Rich.
I didn't see in the comparison if one of these bridges is better or not through our winters. Because we do have a long snowy, not specifically cold, but we do have winter here. Is one better off and for maintenance and that, keeping it open and all that good stuff?
I might defer to Mike on that one.
Yeah, all the structures are fairly similar in concept. They all have above deck, cables, and steel structures, which snow could accumulate on. But this is a similar structure that was constructed in Trail, BC, which they utilize in the winter. And yeah, I don't think there's one that's been better than the other at this high level stage, but they're all feasible to be used in the winter season.
Thanks, Mike. Councillor Bushville.
Thank you through the chair. Mike or Ian, are you able to take advantage of any other art studies that are done through the channel there that are basically in the same area? Can you utilize some work that's already been done? Would that help on the budget as well?
I mean, I think the information is there and we have looked at some of it that's been shared with us by the district, but we don't have access to all the details. It's certainly helpful to know where we need to avoid known archaeological areas. However, whenever any new construction occurs that might be in an area of potential archaeological significance, like on the west shore, it would still require an archaeological assessment to be completed for the specific project, as well as investigate or monitoring during a construction process. But I think it is helpful knowing that there's information there. So it's, it's not like a completely unknown black box of what we're getting into, but at the same time, it would still require a documented process specifically for this project in the crossing to meet the permits that are required from the province and federally as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Beach, do you have something you want to add?
There you go.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that was going to be my question, was the archaeological piece of it. That would significantly add, right? That would be on top of any cost that you've given us. So that's a huge consideration. Yeah, I don't know how much we have on that for that area, but that would be big. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone from ECDAV have any questions? Go ahead, Mike.
In the design of this, was it taken into account to handle emergency vehicles crossing, like ambulances, fire trucks, if the highways ever be closed?
At this point, no. It's something that could be, incorporated into a preliminary design stage if that was a need or consideration. Typically, these bridges, in addition to pedestrians and bikes, will support maintenance and service vehicles. But if that was to be like a fire truck or something of that scale and size, it would need to be a big part of the design criteria. It would probably increase the structural loading requirements for a structure of this size. So at this point, it hasn't, but it's not ruled out.
So, Mike, what do you think the cost increase would be to add emergency vehicles? Like
Yeah,
just a rough guess. I mean, just so that we have the information so we can have a discussion.
Yeah, it's hard to put a number at it without really looking at the detailed numbers. Nedim's here, who's also with us. Maybe he can provide a bit of a input on that.
Hi, this is Nedim Aljo with Covey, and I'm one of the VPs at Covey, and I was in charge of the Columbia River Skywalk project in Trail, and we went through the same discussion there. What does it take to put an emergency vehicle? And what we ended up there is that we eliminated and then only use maybe like an ATV type of a vehicle, and then pulling maybe a dolly or of some sort. And because once you actually start putting an emergency vehicle like an ambulance or fire truck, those are very significant loads. And then I would say it will probably increase the cost by quite a bit. And then I would say in the order of another, 25 to 50% more. So now, you have to, comply to a bunch of roadway type of structure requirements. And then we find that it's a lot of times it's not really needed. just to get across. And, sometimes maybe, if, for example, a pickup truck is quite different from an ambulance weight wise.
All right. Okay, thank you. And-
Another thing that I mentioned actually to Mike is, if you wish, we can organize a site visit to Trail, and then also hook you up with the City of Trail mayor, who was spearheading at the time of the whole funding and design and construction of the bridge, and then how they went about it. So if there's a desire from the city council on a trip to Trail and meet the folk who actually worked on this job and how they went about it, would be pleased to help you with that if you like.
Okay, thank you. We will take that into consideration. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, so just gonna maybe just throw a scenario at you. Let's say we had all the money, we had 20 million bucks right now, which is, we don't. How long would this kind of take? Let's just say the financial equation is out, we're ready to start kind of going. What would be a realistic timeline in years, obviously, for a project of this scale?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say preliminary and functional design could take in the range of 2 years, maybe a little longer. Once you get into detailed, 2-3 years for preliminary and functional design, detailed design, at least another year or so. And I think maybe Mike or Nadeem could be more accurate on the detailed parts of it. But, this is a process that's probably about 4 to 6 years of getting to a construction ready design, just depending on often some of that's out of our control when it comes to permitting processes. To get everything lined up for construction. And then the construction process is usually within a season. I can leave it maybe to Mike and to comment further, but it's not something that could be done within maybe a couple of years. Generally, it's a bit more of a modest, it's a larger scale capital improvement for sure. Not to the extent of something like the Site C construction project up north, but something that does take a bit of time and effort.
Thanks, Hannah. That's all we needed was a high level. How long before you think the report could be finished?
I would say following any final feedback or input here, we could have the report and design finished within about 3 to 4 weeks.
I think that we should focus on that because we need to take this to UBCM. So that's going to be imperative to have. CEO Bennett.
Yes, hello, thank you. So I'm just wondering, in order to move this forward, did you want comments from council in terms of preferred concepts now, or should we gather that information and send it to you so we can make sure this continues to move?
I think the later would be good if you can gather some information and comments to confirm with the district staff, and then we can work with that following this. So don't want to put you too much on the spot today.
Perfect.
Hey, thank you. Daryl, do you have anything you want to add?
It's a big price tag, but I guess going through this process and hearing the pluses and the minuses with all of them, the thing that makes me most fearful is stuff that's out of our control. So the environmental stuff, the art stuff, things that can kind of fly into the middle of the project and hold everything way up. So I'm a big fan of the art. And build it. I know constructability is difficult. They've got 2 stars saying it's hard to build, but they also have 2 stars saying it's expensive. It's not our problem to build it. We're paying for it, and it's too bad it's hard to build. That would be the one where we're on our property, and it's a little more money, but to keep it streamlined, keep it moving. So,
Sure, taking into consideration too that there's already been a bridge crossed. So it's landing in the same spot, right? So there shouldn't be too much archaeology or environmental impact landing in the same space it has been in.
Unless we're putting things like in the water, because there's a weir there and there's things there, so.
Yeah, okay, understand. Okay, any other questions? Counselor McCabe?
I like the arch option.
Yeah, the most expensive one. I think we all do. That's how we roll. That's how we roll, right? Anyway,
Least amount of impact to the environment.
Yeah.
Hard stuff,
good point. Yeah.
ability wise.
The other things could cost and take more time.
My understanding of the arch, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Excuse me, guys.
but My understanding was they actually built that one in the water. Is that right?
You can do it in two ways. You can either stick build it with the temporary towers and stays, and you come out from each of the banks and meet in the middle, or you can pre-build it on a barge outside, and then you barge it over and then lift it into place from the banks. So
Probably sell tickets. And raise money.
yeah,
We could do a great fundraiser. Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate all the information and council will take it all in and we'll gather some information and get back to you.
May I just chime in with the environmental for a sec? In Trail, the environmental piece was actually handled pretty quickly because of the bridges staying out of the water. Really solved the issue quite well. I think within a very short time, we were able to get permits related to the environmental. And then the big thing is to go to them with a plan that, considers construction and also follow through with a final design that's very similar to what we told them at the beginning. And then I think my timeline is less pessimistic than Ian's. And I think in Trail, we were able to do, from concept to design and construction, I would say within about 3 years, including the permitting. And then, if you wanted to accelerate it, there's definitely ways to do that. And we can help you with a lot of these issues by, planning it all the way through.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Have a
Okay,
good
thank
afternoon.
you. Thank you for
Thank you
being
very
here
much.
today.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on. Do we have Angela online yet? Okay, so we're moving to riparian area regulation. Angela Cameron, Senior Aquatic Habitat Biologist, Ministry of Water, Land and Resources Stewardship. Welcome, Angela. We have the council here as well as we do have our economic development board members that will probably have some questions as well. So we're going to open the floor up to you, Angela. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm just going to share my screen. Can everybody see the presentation?
Yes, we can see it, but your mic seems a little sketchy there.
Okay, that's a little odd.
That's better.
Is that better?
That's
okay.
better.
Okay, good. Yeah, sometimes. All right. Well, thank you for having me. And I'm just going to move this around. Okay, great. Yes, so I just wanted to, oh my goodness, go to the beginning, because that would be a good place to start. So I'm Angela Cameron. I'm an RP Bio with the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship. And I just wanted to thank the meeting of the whole today for having me. And I'm presenting to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation, where I'm so grateful to live and work. And today I'm going to just spend a few minutes discussing the riparian areas protection regulation, what it is, why it was implemented, how it can benefit local governments, and also to discuss the provinces, local governments, and landowner roles with regard to the wrapper process. So I'll just call it wrapper from now on because it's a mouthful. I'm going to be kind of going through this presentation hopefully fairly swiftly, so we can have lots of time for questions at the end. But if there's anything pressing, please feel free to interrupt me. So what is the wrapper and what is the process? And how does it kind of interact with other provincial regulatory guidelines and requirements? The wrapper was first created to protect fish and fish habitat, and it was created in support with DFO, like so Fisheries and Oceans Canada, basically to ensure that all commercial, industrial, and residential development is in compliance with the Federal Fisheries Act. So wrapper is administered through the local government through your development permit process. So you'll have a sensitive ecosystems development permit area. And it's an authority that is granted to local governments through the Local Government Act. And aside from ensuring regulatory compliance with the Federal Fisheries Act and provincial measures to protect fish habitat and water quality for the public's interest, the wrapper also provides several potential benefits to local governments, such as planning and engineering department requirements, as it sets minimum setbacks to other to stream systems that may otherwise cause things like erosion issues, floodplain issues, and stormwater management issues. So how does it even come into play? So because wrapper applies to industrial, commercial, and residential developments, wrapper is administered through the local government permitting process, and it's triggered for anything that is development as defined by the regulation. So generally speaking, within 30 meters of a stream, such as a lake, a ditch, a stream channel, or a wetland, if somebody wants to complete anything that falls within the wrapper definition of development, it would trigger this process with the local government. So here I put the development definition down for you to take a look at. And as you can see, the definition under the regulation is very broad, and it encompasses more than what would be triggered just for a building permit. And for this reason, it's very critical that the province and local governments have a really great and open communication so that we can support your staff in administering the regulation as intended. And when your development permit area for streams is triggered, your planning department will then require that landowner to hire a qualified environmental professional or a QEP, as we call them. They're usually environmental consultants, and they have appropriate education, expertise, and they have a professional association that governs them. So for example, an RP Bio, such as myself, is governed by the College of Applied Biologists of BC. And these QEPs assess the streams, which again could be ditches all the way up to lakes. And they use our wrapper methodology to assign a setback. So the 30-meter trigger is just a buffer to trigger the need for the assessment, but the actual setback itself can be anywhere between 2 meters all the way up to 30 meters from the stream boundary. So this report that the QEP creates is then submitted to the province for review so that our biologists can review it and confirm if it conforms with our minimum requirements or not. Reports are always now reviewed within 30 business days of submission, but right now we're actually reviewing them within 10 days of submission. And once a report has been deemed to be accepted or it meets the standards of the wrapper, an email will be generated to the planning department that indicates that the DP can move forward under the current plan that the QEP has submitted. And this will signal to district staff that the permit can be issued so long as the plans are what was agreed upon. So I was asked to kind of prepare an example, and I apologize for my very poor drawing skills. I was not an artist. So for example, here's a screenshot of a couple of streams in the district of Sicamous. And I've I kind of roughly measured out a 30-meter buffer, which is delineated by this really bright red line here. And that means that anything that's shaded in purple would be subject to the wrapper if development was proposed within that area. And that would be the trigger for the regulation. And basically, that would start the process. However, if the development proposed was to like re-roof an existing house or something like that, that would be an exemption under wrapper, because if a house or an existing structure that was there previous to the regulation being created, so pre-2006, any existing structure or land use can be continued so long as it's not changing. So they're allowed to maintain their houses, they're allowed to maintain their decks, their docks, their lawns, any retaining walls, they can maintain those. But as soon as somebody would like to, build a boathouse or a guest house, or maybe they want to tear down a house and rebuild, that would trigger the need for an assessment. And this is just a bit of a summary of what I just said, which is basically that anything that is legal non-conforming, so that would be anything that exists previous to the regulation coming into effect, so pre-2006, you can complete maintenance works on those properties without triggering the wrapper. But as soon as anything's new or if the structure changes, then that's when the wrapper would be triggered. And that's because the wrapper is actually what we call a net gain regulation. So it recognizes that in the past, developments didn't really take into consideration fish habitat. So we're just looking to not do kind of business as usual, but rather build back better, I guess you could say. For local governments, this process, as I mentioned before, can be very beneficial as it reduces the liability of homes and other constructed features being built within floodplains or too close to ravine banks. And it ensures that all new developments are taking into consideration critical fish habitat, while also protecting for extreme flood and drought events, which are unfortunately becoming more and more frequent as climate change progresses. And just a couple of additional notes about the wrapper process here, that if a QEP goes to a lot and they assign a setback that is very large and it basically sterilizes the lot, we have an undue hardship process that would allow the landowner to develop either 30 or 40% of the lot, whatever the zoning allows for, based on if it's a greenfield site or if it's a brownfield or already developed site. So we do have contingencies for allowing people to use the property as it's intended under current zoning through the undue hardship process. Also, the QEPs, I know that staff had asked me to just explain that they do take a wrapper course to understand how to complete these assessments. And because they're part of a professional association, there's a responsibility and a care for detail with QEPs when they're being hired by landowners to basically support the landowners in their development while also adhering to the regulation. And basically, anytime that local government planners have any questions about the wrapper, our team has finally staffed up. So we have 8 members instead of just 2 now. So we have much more capacity to have these types of conversations, which we're very excited about. And we're hoping that in the coming months, we'll actually be doing more outreach, maybe even in person. So yeah, expect it. And I know that there might be questions that we don't get to today, or maybe come up like in your head a few hours from now. And I just wanted to leave you with Ariana McKay's email, because she's the riparian management coordinator for the Rapper team. My role with the Rapper team will be ending in the beginning of August, but Ariana is fantastic, and she'll be here to answer all your questions.
Thank you, Angela. Okay, council, any questions? Councillor Bushel, Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Angela, for the presentation. You were saying that your QEP report turnaround is 30 days, or sometimes as many as little as 10 days?
That's right. Yeah.
We're hearing it's 8 months, and there's a big backlog. Can you?
Yeah, that doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. Yeah, it was up to 8 months back in February. But then my role with the team was, I was tasked with basically getting rid of the backlog. So we updated our process, and I hired 6 additional biologists to do the reviews, and we trained them all up. And now our backlog is basically 10 days right now. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you, Angela, because we've been backlogged here for a long time. So we just assumed that the problem was still there. Yeah. Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, I think Langford has some sort of system where they don't have to refer to the provincial government, and they are their own approving authority. Is that correct? And wouldn't that be simpler than adding more staff to your staff? Just giving local government the authority, avoid that referral process altogether?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I can answer. That's kind of a two-parter. Langford actually doesn't have the authority not to submit reports to the Rapper. So we are actually working with them to try and solve that issue with their process, because it has resulted in litigation several times. So we are working with them to try and assist them in understanding the benefits of having of following the regulation as it's written. However, that being said, there are local governments who do not submit or do not require submission to the Rapper RRNS system, such as the city of Abbotsford, the city of Surrey, as well as the city of Richmond. And there's a couple others, but basically how they do that is, and something that we're very, very much in support of, because I agree it's better to have that process dealt with entirely through the local government if possible. How they do that is they have a quote unquote a meet or beat or meet or exceed portion of their bylaw. So their zoning bylaw guideline for their sensitive ecosystem, it basically exceeds Rapper setbacks in basically every single case. And so we would review any local government that came up with guidelines like that. So for example, the city of Abbotsford has a blanket 30-meter setback. It's quite large. It's perhaps the largest one that exists, but they don't have any variances usually with their setbacks. But if they do, then we would see a Rapper assessment submitted to us, so that council would have the guarantee that they're not going below Rapper by accident. But in those cases, almost every single DP application in those local governments is completely dealt with internally through staff, just because their setbacks exceed the minimum setbacks of Rapper.
Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, so you pointed out that the regulation was here to protect fish habitat. There's some climate change goals in there as well. Has it ever been reviewed or has anything ever been benchmarked at how you're achieving those goals, the program?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are actually able to do some effectiveness monitoring this year. So we finally had the resources and the funding to do some effectiveness monitoring on so RAR and wrapper files. So basically from 2006 until last year, looking at how the protection, stream side protection areas are actually working on the ground, if they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. We have had literature reviews look at the most recent science to determine if our setbacks are too great in some cases or too small in others. So we're actually collecting that information and reviewing it this month, and just going to be making some updates to our regulation within the coming year. So, which is pretty fast for provincial government. So, yeah, that's a great question, and that's stuff that we actually were able to do because of support of local government efforts. So,
Thank you. Deb, do you guys have any questions that you want to? No, you're good. Council Bushel.
Yes, thanks. Through the chair. Yeah, Angela, is the, I'll just wrap it. You talk about the wrapper course. Is that, anybody can take that? Like, could a district employee take that in the planning department and we eliminate the provincial government? You know, because we were having such a big backlog.
yeah. So again, with the backlog, again, we don't. The backlog on our side is gone, but we would say that the local governments that do not submit to wrapper, part of their process tends to be that they have hired a QEP to work in the planning department. So essentially they'll hire their own biologist to work as an environmental planner for the local government, reviewing applications to take that load off of the planners themselves and provide good information at pre-application meetings and things like that. So we do find that has been really I mean, the feedback I've gotten from local governments who have an individual like that has been very positive. But again, it really has to do with the process that would allow you to kind of forego submitting to RARNS and waiting for feedback. But if there are any desires to change the process, we're here to review it and provide feedback and help. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Sorry, I just have one question, I guess, on the maintenance aspect of it. Like here in our channel, we have a lot of high water flow goes through it. A lot of silt is moved and fills up in some areas. It would could we maintain it by like clearing out some of the silt that's been put there? Would that be in the maintenance aspect?
Yeah, that's another good question, and kind of I wasn't able to squeeze in the relationship between wrapper and the Water Sustainability Act, but those are two regulations that you know, they seem like they're very similar, but they're actually very, very different. And the WSA would be the regulatory body that, or the regulatory mechanism that you would use to do that type of in-stream maintenance. So for any maintenance of a channel and things like that, you would normally do that under like a WSA notification if it's just your normal stormwater works, or like a blanket section 11 for your whole district kind of thing, through the Ministry of Forests.
And what if it was just like an individual with their forestry, like for businesses along the channel or
yeah, again, they would, any in-stream works must be looked at or receive authorization through the Water Sustainability Act. And then basically from the high water mark or the stream boundary upland, that's all within the wrapper jurisdiction. So if you're just looking at the actual in-stream maintenance, then that would be Water Sustainability Act.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Anyone else? Council? Go ahead, CEO Bennett.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question. Can you go back to the picture of the lagoon the drawing that you did? And I
Yeah.
popped out for a minute and I don't know if you touched on this. So the red area is the 30-meter mark. And then there's an area which is the SPIA, which is the no build zone. And it's normally around 15 meters. I know it changes here and there. And you talked about grandparenting. In your professional opinion, within that 15 meters, is there ever an opportunity to do anything in there moving forward with these new regulations? Or is that just never again will it be touched? Because I know there's a lot of people who have properties in that area within the 15-meter mark right now. So just some clarity on that.
Yeah. So the red mark is a 30-meter, like super approximate measurement that I did on Google Earth. The red line is sort of, if we say that's 30 meters from the boundary of the lake and the river, then anything that's proposed within the purple dash areas would trigger the need for a wrapper assessment. And yes, it would vary, like there would be different types of setbacks, but whatever the setback is determined to be, so the streamside protection and enhancement area is the SPIA, and there is no work that can be done within the SPIA other than restoration. So yeah, you're absolutely right that the intent is that nothing further gets done except for restoration or naturalization of the setback area. But then there are those situations that I mentioned where we can't legally sterilize a property from its intended use. So if that setback makes it impossible for somebody to, like, if they want to demolish a house and rebuild, then they would, and their setback is like 60% of their property or 70% of their property, then we would allow them to apply for an undue hardship, and they would be able to work with their QEP to determine a footprint within the SPIA that would be minimal, but then maybe there's some reclamation that happens as well. So it's sort of like a win-win situation.
Perfect.
So Angela, I just have a quick question since this slide came back and it just crossed my mind. So that's the lagoon, and fish habitat is very, very low, according to last QEP that was doing some work in there. So does that make a difference as well? Because it is basically a man-made dredged lagoon and fish habitat, which, I mean, that's the the trigger here. So is there a difference between places like that and just regular non-man-made, just lakeshore?
Wow, these are such great questions. I'm so happy. With the wrapper and with the Fisheries Act, actually, fish habitat has become very broad. So it's not just where fish live or fish rear or spawn. It's more if there's connection with the water, then there can be like, for example, if there's an oil spill in this lagoon, will it also make its way into the lake? I mean, there's a potential for that to happen. And so just the same way that could happen, there could be litter fall and insects falling from the trees here that would benefit fish habitat as well. So anything connected, that's why even ditches are protected under wrapper. It doesn't matter if fish, carry out their full life processes in an area. It's more the connection of flowing or of water at all, and then the connection where there's a potential that fish could access the area. So even confirmed non-fish bearing like ditches, for example, they have a reduced setback, but they still are protected under the wrapper.
Okay, thank you. And just the second part of my question is, the ECDEV board is here today because we are, as was just mentioned, looking at perhaps dredging the channel. The fish habitat in the channel is dying because the water is so low in there and so warm, the fish can't move freely anymore. So is there some rules or regulations where you get to do something that enhances or creates a better environment for fish habitat?
Yeah, like I said, through the Water Sustainability Act, which I think that an application had been made to dredge this feature a couple of years ago, maybe. And that is absolutely 100% the correct pathway to go if you want to be dredging or doing compensation works or just restoration works of any kind. The WSA allows for those things and are pretty happy to see those types of projects come in. The wrapper, again, the jurisdiction of the wrapper begins where the stream ends. So it's sort of at the very boundary. So if there was like a retaining wall here, for example, like in other imagery, I could see that this area is a beach and that there appears to be kind of like a retaining wall around here. And in some years, I can see the water comes all the way up to the retaining wall. So I'd say that's probably the stream boundary. So any works from then and then upland would be wrapper, and any works within the actual lagoon and within that beach area would be WSA.
Go ahead, Councilor Bailey.
Yeah, so just a very simple question so everybody can fully understand this. Everything that is on the map that we're currently looking at, let's just say it's not there. It could not be built today, correct?
It could, what it was said earlier was, oh, well, what if there was a 15-meter setback, for example? So the setbacks are they're prescribed through the technical manual. So if there was a 15-meter setback to this lagoon, which would make sense.
Well, let's just say 30. Let's just say 30 for practical purposes.
Yeah, if there was a 30-meter setback, then the red line would be where there couldn't be development. Yes. Okay. But currently the red line just shows where there would be a trigger for an assessment.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important that people just know the implications of what we're talking about here and the big policy change that a lot of the places that are in Sycamoose would not be permitted to be built today under these current regulations. And I think that's where there is a concern level around this. And that's why I asked you about, I'm certainly very interested to see what your report says on the efficacy of the the law. I'm glad that you guys took a look at that. So I certainly hope that's available to the public and, municipalities.
Angela, you also mentioned though that land cannot be sterilized. Like, I mean, there has to be a portion of it that people can build on. I mean, you can't own property on the channel and not be able to build on it, right?
Yeah, in these situations, so undue hardship was created because of what we call legacy lots. And in this situation, it's a perfect example of legacy lots that would not have been created in today's legislation, under today's legislation, but were created pre-2004, which is, so I should explain the RAR, which existed before the wrapper, came into full effect in 2004, but it wasn't actually required that local governments start implementing it until 2006. So 2006 tends to be our more lenient date where I say, was it built before 2006? Okay, or was it subdivided before 2006? Sure, like let's just move forward with this. It's legal non-conforming, and a lot of these lots, especially in the Okanagan, but also in places like Harrison Hot Springs, they have lots of these tiny little lots that exist right next to places with big setbacks. And the whole lot can be sterilized. And so that's why the undue hardship was created, was basically to as an understanding that we can't undo what was done before. We're going to work with local governments to make sure that landowners can still use their lots and build on them. And like I said, if it's currently lawn, they can maintain it as lawn. It's only just, if they let it kind of start going a little wild and naturalized, then it becomes an issue with like removing trees and shrubs and things like that. But yeah.
Hey, council, anything else? Angela, thank you very much for your presentation today. That was helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Where are we now? Development services update. Sarah, you have the podium, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just waiting for our visuals to come up on screen here. Okay, so our development developments will be regarding building permits. So this would be for our second quarter, I believe. This is April through June. Permit issuances. Any questions or comments on this one?
Council, any questions? Theo?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that and this should say 2023 on it, not 2022, but we have $10 million in building permits, of which 8 million of that was in the month of May and June. So May and June were a pretty heavy building permit month. Previously, I think we had about 1 million. So in these 3 months, we've got 9.1 million in building permits. So that's a significant increase in our building permits previously. So there's lots of things happening.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's nice to see. Council, any comments? Carry on, Sarah.
Right, so our next slide are development applications. These are also quarterly, so this is April through June. We've also got some year-to-date data on there. Are there any questions or comments there?
Council? No, go ahead.
And finally, our last update for bylaw enforcement. So we've got some information here on files that have been opened, closed, complaints that didn't require files to be opened. And then there's also information on here about tickets. So you can kind of see what types of tickets are being issued and kind of what their dollar value is, as well as a comparison to last year.
Council, any questions? Everyone's good? John's obviously doing a good job. Okay, that's good. Thanks, Sarah. Okay, go ahead. UBCM Next Generation 9/11 Funding Program for information to council.
Thank you, Chair. So we wanted to bring this fund to council just to give you an introduction to what it is and what it's about ahead of time. So obviously the background of what is NG 911, it is a term I've been throwing around last year a little bit and doing a little bit of work around it. So NG 911, it stands for Next Generation 911. What it is modernization of our 911 networks and infrastructure all across Canada. It's a federal mandate that this is done, and the idea is to support improvements to public safety. So what this means for local governments. Local governments are responsible for providing GIS data that will be used as part of emergency response.
GIS. What's GIS?
With GIS, it stands for Geographic Information Systems, which is basically mapping. So you know our public inquiry map that is developed in a GIS environment. So in order to provide this data for these programs, there is a very specific format that the data has to be provided in. And a lot of local governments, there isn't necessarily a standard about how that data is stored or what information is attached to that data. So you do have to provide a specific format, have specific information attached to it. So what we need to be providing is road center line, site structure address points or addressing, and street name aliases. So what are our road? So the program itself is through UBCM, and this is to support local governments in transitioning to this new system. A base funding amount of $45,000 is being given to every local government, and eligible activities for the use of those funds include education, legal and contract costs for migration to this new system, as well as mapping and GIS and training for local fire departments. So where are we right now? So we've been hearing about this as staff for a while, and we've been integrating this into a lot of our projects to make sure that we're ready for this as it comes. So right now, we've already updated our mapping system. So I think you're all aware of that. We've got a better public-facing map to provide information to the public. It was also updated to help support public works in maintenance of infrastructure, as well as inventories, asset management. So we also had to rebuild our address data set. So the way that digital information was being stored was not in a format that functioned very well, especially in terms of public works and out in the field. We actually have a tablet out in the field where they can access all this information and mapping. And that wasn't working for them. So we did rebuild that, and that was done through departmental budgets. But we were mindful that we would need to provide in a specific format for this upcoming change. So that was built with that in mind. We also updated our civic address and street naming bylaw, which was updated, and remember, they were pretty old one-pagers that didn't have a lot of information on there. So those updates put in place best practices in terms of how we go about addressing new properties or renaming streets, that it would support emergency services wayfinding, so it was consistent. So in terms of how cities could use the funds, we could use it to recoup the cost of updating our address data, getting our road center lines. We do not currently have road center line data. We do have roading alias data, but there have been noted over since I've been here, there are some inconsistencies there. So we do need to double check and make sure that they're accurate. That is part of our responsibility. And then also using those funds to support setting up data sharing with an aggregator. So in the staff report, I did talk about working with the International Cadastral Society, ICIS. I'm trying to remember what that stands for. And they're in BC, they sort of fill a gap in BC in terms of data and GIS data. And what they do for us currently is they actually ensure that road names and addressing information gets fed to GeoBC to keep their civic address, like address BC data layer up to date, as well as the road atlas. It sounds like though that they're not going to be necessarily able to step into this role for NG 911. So the CSRD is looking at stepping in to fill that gap, which is not unusual. This would be pretty normal that a regional government would do that. So we'll see how that all works out. And yeah, we bring more information forward at that time, once we kind of figure out where we're going. So basically we could be hiring a consultant ourselves to do road center line data, or we might be cooperating with the CSRD, at City of Salmon, Revelstoke, et cetera, on a joint RFP to have a contractor do it for the whole region. But like I said, we'll learn more as this goes on.
Hey, thank you. Council, any questions? Councilor Bush.
To the chair. Sarah, I guess as we migrate towards NG 911, is the $45,000 going to be enough to do everything we need to do?
It's a good question. I think doing the address layer, I think it was around $3,000 to do that. So I think it would, especially, we need to include any training for fire department staff that might need to be done. It really depends on whether or not that equipment in their vehicles has to be updated. And I did reach out to the CSRD to find out about that, and that's not, equipment itself is not related to the funds. And it didn't sound like that equipment would need to be changed. It's just where that, what data that equipment is running off of. So still not 100% sure yet. This has been like a slowly evolving topic.
The centerline data stuff sounds a little expensive to figure out all that.
I did ask for a quote. I don't quite have it yet, but it didn't sound like it was really much. Yeah.
Thank you.
So just for clarification, this is a federal program. It's driven by 911 emergency response. So we're digging deeper into the weeds of streets and lines and roads and where everyone is living. And that is basically the information that they're collecting, nothing else. Like, it's just, and will the equipment, back to Gord's, will the equipment, or your comment, if that's the case, all the equipment and vehicles will need to be updated, right?
Didn't sound like it would need to be done. I did reach out to the CSRD to find out. It didn't sound like the equipment itself would need to change. That would be okay. So it really has to do with the information that's attached to that data. So for example, the road center line data, more like, we'll get into the weeds a little bit about what that is. They want to know exactly where all the cross streets are, for example. Exactly how many address points are on that street and which addresses are on the street. So there's like some crossing of information and adding it to that. So they want to know, is this the north section, the south section? How far is it from the next intersection? It gets a little bit detailed, and it's more than what we certainly need to do our business, but for 911 responders, they need it to help them accurately locate where someone is in needs help.
Okay, anyone have any other questions? Thank you, Sarah. We're good. Okay, operations and infrastructure. The pump track is going to be moved to Darrell, and we have a Sycamoose District Recreation Center update, which I'm going to do the update on that. I spoke to John on Monday, and we have a meeting set up with, being set up right now with CEO Bennett, Director Martin, CAO McLean, and myself. I spoke to him about the issues and challenges that we are having with the rec center and the booking times. And it's not as cut and dry and simple. It's a matter of union people. It's a matter of people that being there that have the skill set to be there to make sure they can open and close. There's a lot of things that we need to go over. So we will be discussing, I will be reaching out to the user groups, which I've already started to, just to get the information that I need. Kelly and I go into this meeting, and it's almost, it's as well, it's financial, I mean, the recreation needs to make some money to support it as well. So there are many things involved in this. It's not as cut and dried and simple as when we used to run it, and whoever wanted it could use it. We don't run it anymore. So we are going to work out a schedule that works for everyone. So until we have that meeting, there's really not much more I can add to that, but we are
discussing this now.
I don't have any information. So if you'd like to go ahead, Councilor Bailey, go ahead.
No, I just want to know where we are with the agenda. Are we on?
Oh, no, it's next on the agenda right here, operations and infrastructure.
No, but we have under E, Sycamoose District Recreation Center.
Did I skip ahead of you?
Yeah, like that's all. Yeah. I was just wondering.
That's your, okay, well, I'm done. Go ahead, Daryl.
Where I can wait, doesn't matter.
Actually, you know what? You and I can switch spots. So that's the update on the rec center until we get, sorry about that, Daryl, didn't mean to step on your toes. That's until we sit down with the user groups. We don't have much more information. Yeah, go ahead.
So I mean, there's obviously been some concern about this in the community. I'm glad that John has been able to get back and touch base. I mean, I think this is something that previous councils even discussed. I think it's something that we should be discussing as a council on a larger level, what makes sense for our community. This is not something that I know people were concerned that we're beating up on the CSRD, and I would say, no, it's the opposite of it. It's actually, how does this arena and how does the function of this arena work for everybody here? And obviously there's some financial implications. We pay about $380,000 a year towards the operation of the arena. So we need to make sure that money is being properly utilized, properly managed in terms of the benefit that is coming to our community as well, because that is Sycamores, District of Sycamores taxpayers' money. And I think the discussion I wanted to have was, is this working for us? And that's why I put it here. I think it's kind of timely that we have a whole bunch of issues that have been identified by the user groups. There's certainly frustration in the community. And I thought it was just an appropriate thing to have on the committee of the whole, given this background. I'm glad that the meeting is going forward. I really am, but I don't think it should necessarily preclude discussions of other options and things that we might want to consider. And I think we're at that stage probably where a good, healthy discussion in the public and getting public input on what this arena's goal is and how we want it to interact with our community and our hockey users and other groups. And we have some plans too, in terms of our strategic priority that we'd like to see. We've talked about as a council, how that all kind of fits together. So that's why it's here. And I mean, maybe I'm the only one that wants to say anything about it, but that was kind of my idea behind it and why I asked for it to be put on the agenda. It's not a bash the CSRD session. It's far from it. It's about how to make this work for everybody.
Thanks, Ian. And yes, that is definitely is our goal, but we don't manage it. So we're going to sit down and figure out how this does work best for this district of Sycamores. We don't own it. We don't manage it. It is part of Sycamores. So we are going to sit down and see if we can get our fair shake there, because things have changed. It used to be run by the district and they used to have a board, but then it was handed off to another company to run it. And then they failed. So then it was handed to the CSRD, who had managers in place. So the CSRD is managing it. So that's the whole point of this meeting, is to figure out how we all work together a little bit better, because we all know that it's been a little contentious at times. So that's what this meeting is all about. Go ahead, Councillor Bushel.
Yeah, just, well, go back, we'd never run it. The District of Sycamores has never run it. It was developed in 1981. And the society was set up and they ran for 42 years, whatever, maybe 40 years. And we're in year 42 now. And we've had the same service agreement with the CSRD for 42 years. And that agreement was put in place to actually build, operate, and run the rec center. So the building is done, right? The debt is gone, and we still don't have a new, service establishment agreement. So we really need to focus on it. We've got 9 or 10 other service agreements with the CSRD. They look after mosquitoes. They used to look after our CSRD or our economic development, but we thought we could do a little better. And we did do a little better, I think. But going back to the rec center, when our hockey team in town can't book a game, and now they're playing in Vernon, and they tried to book in January, and they never got a response till May. And I know they've gone through their hoops with management, you know? It's just time to look at the service agreement. And I think myself, it takes a year or so to actually even get somebody to negotiate a service agreement. We need to put them on notice that we want to review the service agreement and review the whole management of the rec center because it's not working. Evan and I met on February 17th, 2021. Kelly and Evan did a delegation in June 16th, 2022. Nastadia took over in June 11th, 21. You know, they terminated them on the 22nd. And it's not serving our community. And I always say is, if we're paying $380,000 a year, why are we paying $380,000 a year? Like, why don't we just, if all the user groups just want to book the rink, call the CSRD and book it? Like, why are we paying for it? The debt's paid off, all that's been done. So we really got to sit down with the CSRD and say, how do we make this work? And I think there's some frustrated user groups in the community after talking to some minor hockey and you know, people just using the gym for that matter. You know, so that's all I'd like to say.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone disagrees. Go ahead, Councillor Rich.
Through the chair. Yeah, I think the big thing here is, and I know they need to make money and to keep it running. But then how does that work for our community? Because it's not a non-profit, but the rec center is here to service Sycamoose. And should be, yes, CSRD, yada, yada, yada. But our family should be, Sycamoose should be, our kids should be the ones and seniors. And if someone wants to go into that arena to use the cafeteria or whatever, those our community should be getting first dibs. And if they say the $385,000 that we're paying is not giving us that, then what do we need to do that? Because I'm involved just because of where my kids are at I know what's going on in both high school. They're paying to use the ice. The elementary school pays to use the ice. All the hockey kids used to pay the ice. We've just got the Eagles yesterday up to a junior A team. Sycamoose minor hockey was voted today. They got a big award for being the best minor hockey in, I think it's Okanagan. I don't know the title. So we're working really hard to put these groups, get our kids on the ice, be community. And what do we need to do to make, when we apply, I don't feel like we need to be on equal. Like, so if Kamloops wants ice and Sycamoose wants ice, I don't think that needs to be equal. It should be, you know what, Sycamoose, January 1st, you got a month to tell us what ice you want, and then we're selling off everything else. Or whatever, go to our user groups. Here's, you've got this window to get yourself together, whatever the dates are. I don't book hockey, so I have no clue. But, and then selling off anything we have left. Right now, from what I've talked to the people, that it isn't even if Kamloops wants something and Sycamoose wants something, it's not even a fair level field for them to go in. Other communities are getting our ice time ahead of us, and we're not even competing on that. I don't think we should have to compete, personally.
Thanks. Yeah, and it is Sycamoose and Area E, Director Martin's area as well, not just Sycamoose. I just want to correct that. Anyone else of Councilor Beach?
Yeah, that was predominantly what I felt too, is that right now we absolutely don't know how this arena manager is scheduling and planning for the future use of the building. It feels like to the user groups that aren't being responded to that they're not interested. Right, we've lost White Balls ball camp that was a great asset to this community prior to COVID. We've lost it because of lack of interest in supporting it at the arena, and I just think it's a detriment to our community. And I'm glad that we're paying money towards the operation, because we need to use that as a leverage to make sure that our people in the area are being serviced by that arena, like they always have been. And of course, they have to make money, but the users have to, the primary users have to be locals first.
Thank you. Hey, anyone else? Councillor Bailey?
Yeah, so you're having this meeting, I guess, coming up. I mean, I wish you well. I don't think these are any new issues. It should be fairly easy to knock this out. So then I'd like to have this on the next council meeting, and I think we should be reviewing the service agreements coming up. So maybe that could be circulated to council so that we can have a proper discussion about this and understand what our roles, obligations are, or possibilities are as well. I think that should be part of the conversation. I think it's gotten to a point, and the frustration has gotten to the point, to be fair, that we owe ourselves to have that conversation. Whether this can be worked out with CSRD and some other things can be great. That could be the other option. But I don't think we should, as Councillor Bushell said, think it's 42 years. It's probably time to take a look at it anyways. And so if we could have this on the next council agenda, I think that would be a good time to get an update how the next month goes and the back and forth with you and Councillor Rona, and just go from there.
Yep, thank you. I just want to add, let's also keep in mind that we lost, or the contract was giving to, who was the Stadia, I think, and then bounced to CSRD, and then bounced to an election, and then bounced to two CAOs that aren't even here anymore. So I just want us just to be a little bit patient, because you've got new players in this game trying to figure out an old problem and be fair to everyone. So that's all I'm asking for, is us to sit down. I think that all of us have now got our feet on the ground and know who's who in the zoo. So perhaps we can start figuring some things out, but just, yes, please be patient. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Bushell.
Yeah, thank you, going through the chair.
It's okay.
I just, I know there's been lots of changes, but they still got to open the doors. If you want to make money, you got to open the doors. It's like I literally tell you, it's like a private club over there. The doors aren't open. You can't even get in the place unless there's a tournament going on. And even then they got the doors closed. Or not a tournament, but I mean,
yeah, no, yeah, I understand. It hurt.
you can't make money if you're not open. And if they have a staffing problem, I mean, when did James retire? I mean, have they posted? April. Have they posted? I mean, and who knows, how long is Kyle going to be there? They should be training and anyway, that's my little.
Go ahead, Councillor Rich. We'll take one and move on.
I just think, yes, we have to be patient, but it's also time sensitive, because the way the ice is booked, and I do know a little bit about it, is it's booking now. So that's for minor hockey, figure skating, which comes out of Salmon Arm, but services our kids, the Eagles. Ice time's booked now. I think there's probably about 5 weeks, and then the schedule will be made. So we're not saying, oh, hold off for a month or two. When we hold off, what happens is we're now holding off for another year. So I think it is time sensitive, right? That we do have to say, we need some help here.
Absolutely. And I agree. And that meeting is set up for beginning of next week. We're just waiting for confirmation from Director Martin. So, okay.
Can I just make a note? I do want to make sure this is a follow-up on the next council agenda. So do you want me to make a motion or a recommendation, or you'll just put it on, Kelly?
Yeah, I don't,
Whatever information we can gather, we'll bring to council.
correct.
No, I'd like to also have a chance to review the service agreements, if that could be sent around.
Most definitely. The service establishment bylaws.
That's right.
We have a service establishment bylaw. It doesn't really have much in it, but that's what we have with Area E and CSRD and us. We're the two participants. So yeah, I can send you any documentation related to the arena. I've got lots of information.
Yeah, I just want us to keep on this, like it could be that we get the information and we decide, okay, this is going in the right way, or we want to have another discussion. I just want to make sure there's like a continuation here rather than.
Absolutely. There will be, for sure.
Yeah, I wish you really well. Lots of, I hope is coming out of this. It's just not a new issue. That's all. I mean,
Yeah, we understand.
Yeah.
We get it, and this has been a problem for a while. Counselor Evans, please.
Hi there. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that we really made a good application to run that a couple of years ago, and they gave it to New Stadia. So the council has been and will continue to fight to make it better for our community to be able to use that facility. We have been working on it. I mean, we put a good application and they chose an organization to run it from Quebec. So, you know, we are trying, and we're behind you, Mayor Anderson, and we are working on this, and we're not going to stop pushing on it.
Great. Thanks, Counselor Evans. Okay.
Yeah, just from a super quick financial point, because that's my background. So it costs about $900,000 to $1 million to run the arena each year. So that's what the bottom line is here of, and they get about 180,000 right now from user groups for booking. So that this tax requisition here, which ranges from, is around 600,000. So that gets split, not evenly, but that gets split, let's just say 40-60. So we pay 60% of that, and I'm approximating, and Area E pays 40. I think it's like 38-60 something. So that's where Area E and the District of Sycamoose both get a say on how it's being operated, because we're both paying for the subsidy of running this. And just for the record, this is actually small compared to some other arenas. It's not arenas and pools. It's always a deficit. So this is where we need to work with the stakeholders to make sure we're getting out of it what we want from our. Yeah, I just wanted to explain that really high level.
That's really good information.
Yeah, because if we're not collecting money on it, then our taxpayers will be taxed high at a, you know. Okay, is it, okay, one more and we can move on.
Just thank you. Good information. And I think we also have to remember Area E there are kids, there are seniors, they are absolutely, so our minor hockey, some of our Eagles players, the people that are accessing the arena, the people that are paying the $5 to watch, they are coming from Canby South Squad, they're coming from Malacqua, they're coming from Swansea Point. So I really don't think it's an Area E and a Sycamoose thing. When I speak Sycamoose and our users, that's our community, right?
Sure.
That it's our kids and our, you know, old timers or whoever.
Thank you for reiterating that. That's awesome. Okay, all right, let's move along. Oh, does Bob have some? Oh, okay. All right, Daryl, I'm so sorry again. I stepped on your toes.
Playing with my emotions. I'm not up. Okay, so just really high level, lots of stuff going on. I just wanted to kind of take you around the world and so July, been a super busy month. Replace the battery on this. Is that you?
Yes. Next one should work sometimes. Messing with you.
Okay, so quarterly, the CSRD was having PTAC meetings, the Public Technical Advisory Committee for solid waste. A little bit of history on that. I'll show you a little timeline, but I think the long and short of it is solid waste management plan was conducted and completed 2022 by Morrison Hirschfield, CSRD. Coming out of that, they looked at MOE's guidelines and they're going to require a full plan review. So that will have an impact on all of us.
Right now.
I think it'll help. So there's the timeline. They started the solid waste management plan, CSRD back in 1993. A couple of key dates I just wanted to identify was 2009, they signed up for zero waste plan mandate. They're aiming to that in the future. And then 2022, that 5-year effectiveness review was completed by that firm that I just mentioned. Stemming from that assessment, there's a whole number of emerging issues and opportunities that are now summarized in the report. The next steps will be a public survey, summarized memos, and prioritization of steps. And then they'll form a plan. It'll be over the next few years. If anybody wants a copy of that report, just get a hold of me and I can share that with you. A biofuel facility. So we're working towards substantial completion. It worked, it's running. I was there yesterday. I saw a fire where we were supposed to see a fire. Chip thing spins and all the augers. It's quite a cool facility. That's the boiler. It's huge. The guy's insulating back there. They're just putting finishing touches on things. This motor will be replaced. It's just a loaner. They've been waiting months and months and months for the right motor. They've got that one in there. It's working. It's just little things like that. That'll be spun out when it comes in. And we'll be able to do the substantial completion. So you see a couple of lines coming out and going down to Thompson Place. And then it feeds the west side of the industrial park. Those two lines. These two lines head over to the anchor tenant there at Twin. We've got a couple more spots there to shoot out to the road and go north. So we're doing pretty good. Pump track, I was gonna have a fellow from Bella Solutions comment after my presentation today. He's in the middle of a ton of stuff. So I just really high level want to talk to you guys about what our last plan was when we last spoke. We had a little site meeting. I left it wide open and we had a really good site meeting with the designer out there. So we had a good discussion about what the track should look like because depending what you build, it'll dictate whether or not you get on the circuit. So you want to have at least a qualifying track so we can get some semblance of events here. So we had that discussion with him, talked about the scale of the track, complexity, how nice it would be to have a little kiddie track beside the big people track. And then obviously there were tree issues in Finlayson Park. We'd identified that one little area down by Diamond 4, across from Diamond 4, as being kind of our preferred location. When we got on site and started looking at that was just from their brochure. This was initially kind of what we were thinking. And the designer was just like, why would you go past this? You got enough room. And I really didn't think we had enough room there. He said we have plenty of room there. So my concern was it's pretty loaded with trees. He said that'd be awesome to have it through the trees. So I was pretty excited coming out of that meeting. They can do a lot of stuff with a good design plan. So knowing that we want to move this way, we've talked about it in the finance meetings, we've budgeted for this kind of thing. We have some money in the budget for design. After that meeting, I took the liberty of getting a little further information on this little piece of land. So we did some surveying and got it to him, and he's done a preliminary for us to look at. So it's pretty exciting. And that's what it looks like. I can't really speak to it with a whole lot of knowledge, other than that's the caboose. I know that. So it does fit in that footprint. And apparently it's a 25-second track, which would get us some of the qualifying runs. So I'm going to get some more information. What I'd really like to get some input from y'all. You can ask some questions, and then maybe in August we can bring this forward and really get rolling. It's kind of the numbers we were thinking and talking and budgeting for. Landscaping would be something we could probably do in-house. I've got some ideas on the drainage. They have piping. You might be able to cheapen it up with some rock pits. So we can have those discussions further down the way. The next step, like I said, the survey and top was done. Conceptual design, he's got that prepared. We kind of looked at it there. We can get this before you guys with a little more detail, maybe get the fella to come and speak to it in August. And he's not too far away. He could rally a troop and get this going. So we own the land, so it makes it nice.
Nice.
So this is done and it looks great and it's busy every day. And we are working on getting this area for parking. This is the Telus that's kind of there. Oh, yeah, it's just beside the court. So I'll put a gate in and use it, but I need the permission. We're working with Telus Real Estate. Something Canada Day was super successful. we got onto the bar to take a look at some stuff and
Oh, nice. That's the fireworks, right?
yeah, they're all in packages like that. I didn't realize it looked like that. So, it's cool. We had 4 guys at the same time yell, "Don't step on the wires." Too much close. And then there's tons of people at night. Yeah, let us see. Capel Water Main, jump over there. We had a pre-con meeting yesterday. So we had the whole crew there. We walked up and down. So I'm not gonna lie, there's gonna be some challenges with that one, just in terms of traffic and just people feeling displaced and inconvenienced. We've made a traffic plan. They've made a traffic plan and we've had our input. It'll be a moving and adjusted work as we go. Because nothing's ever perfect on paper. I'm worried about people coming off the highway. We want to keep access to the church. There's a bunch of things. So I guess if anybody's asking, we couldn't do this much sooner because of the high water table. And we can't wait much later because we want to get it paved. So we're in that sweet spot. We really need to get going. Pretty complex traffic plan. Hope it works. If it doesn't, we'll adjust some stuff, right?
Yeah.
But there will be local traffic. That the challenge is, you know, somebody from across the highway coming with their boat going, I'm a local. That's not what we mean. So we're going to have to try to keep it local residents, and there will be people stationed. But we're opting to pretty much shut that road down for a bit. It'll be a couple months. They will leave the boat launch alone. They'll do the milling through that intersection, put a little ramp and leave the boat launch alone until the end of summer. So they will work on the other side. Yeah, that'll be ramping up really quick. Owlhead Creek Culvert was there on Monday morning for a pre-con meeting. And they're putting the bridge in place already. And they just the level of monitoring and scrutiny. I think they caught 119 fish yesterday in the little nets. Oh, we had to measure them all and weigh them all. Yeah. Wow. Them, probably.
Did they tag them?
No, I don't think. No, I don't think they're tagging them. Yeah, they're just little. Yeah, so they're in there. They're monitoring. Lots of layers.
Got lots of bugs and fish here in town.
Expensive culvert.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So yeah, they're diverting the water right from the, I guess, the south side to the north side. We've got some the cofferdam built. We're bringing it over through there. There's diffusers. It's a big operation. But they know what they're doing. So that's ongoing. This is our plant. You know, and I'll talk about it later, some of it, but today we had an army show up. They're cleaning out our phosphorus lagoon. Last week in-house, we cleaned out the drying bed. So we're waiting for these guys to discharge into there. So ongoing maintenance there. So it's busy around PW. A few other things going on. We are pushing hard to get the wastewater treatment facility registered with MOE. That's a very complex thing. We'll talk about that. Researching outdoor social rink options. We're looking at, opportunities for that, getting some pricing, LED conversions for our street lights. We've got some prices in, and we're going to get going on that. A more street lift station. We're looking to get independent power there. Currently it's fed under the sidewalk. And then a bunch of pre-con meetings. The Dairy Queen has got going on their grubbing. They're starting 2 miles rolling now. Owlhead Culvert, Capel West water line, Healing Center on Friday. I've got a meeting. So yeah, it's getting super busy. And then the biofuel, we're basically substantially complete. I'm thinking next week. And the water restrictions, as you've probably seen, we're at level 2, stage 2 now. So we've got the ambassador going out trying to educate people on that. And we picked a location for the fire lantern. It'll be at the top of each park, right next to the future water slide. Yeah. Water slide, the people have spoken. That's really where they want it. Those tables from the beer gardens pulled up.
Thank you, Daryl. That's great. Lots of stuff going on. Thanks. Counselor Beach.
Daryl, through the chair. Where's the supply for the biofuel right now coming from?
What they brought in was right from Fink, right from Enderby.
Oh.
They brought their own stuff right now.
Oh,
We're not burning much. That was more of just a test run.
okay,
Way too hot.
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, don't need.
Yeah, don't need heat right now. Don't need help.
Okay, but have we done a plan for
Well, the
what
plan,
the source would be?
yeah, so they will manage the source for the first 2 years. That is the plan. So they're gonna build it and run it for 2 years. And that includes bringing in the wood as needed.
Oh, okay.
Anyone else?
Just a-
Counselor Bailey.
So you'll really test it at full tilt in the fall. then,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, we'll fire it up into September and really test it out.
And then, so there's 2 more buildings that could be, did you have 2 more?
Yeah, more than 2 buildings.
Yeah,
We have
more than,
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
all
we
right.
feed more than that off those lines.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So how many people are connected right now or will be?
So one side, and then, so we know the anchor tenants, that's quite a big area. And then we've got, I think 2 doors down is expressed interest, and we've got another one in the corner for sure with an option for another. So we got 2 in the air.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
Good news story.
For asking.
Counselor Rich.
Through the chair, Daryl, does Capel know that this is happening to them? Like, has someone gone around with door knockers and hung it on their door and everybody's knowing where it's coming?
Yeah, so we've done, like, obviously the social media blitz, which is only so good. But the contractor is charged with hitting every door and doing the surrounding area. So they're gonna do White Pines as well and Shuswap. We're gonna attack all of them.
Yeah, good. Counselor McCabe, did you want to ask that?
I think the contractor's done a good job of notifying the locals. They've door knocked every door and they've handed out the contact information, and I think it's been handled pretty good so far.
Excellent. Anyone else have any questions for Daryl? Thanks, Daryl. You're doing a great job. Oh,
Daryl. Yeah, no, I just want to say thanks. Good work. We'll get over for a tour. Bio.
Sure. Yeah, we'll have to, we'll do a ribbon cutting or something, but maybe even before that, we can get over there.
Marshmallows?
Thanks, Daryl. Great job. Good job. Lots of good stuff going on. Okay, moving along. Strategic priorities and then council reports. So are you going to bring up the strategic priorities list? Does anyone have anything that they would like to comment on the strategic priorities? All right, then let's start. Councillor Rich.
I went to Canada Day and it was wonderful. Volunteered at the beer gardens all day and night.
Saw you.
Yes. But yeah, that's about it for the month for me. It was pretty low key for me.
Thank you, Councillor Bushel.
Through the chair, attended the Flocky unveiling, the beach at 2 Mile, so that was quite a few people there. It was good. Thank you. So lots of fun. I think the Flockards were very happy. Planning and Development Committee, Scott and Sarah and Stephanie had the last meeting went really well. Lots of developments on the go, and looking forward to some of the stuff will be on tonight's regular council meeting. So yeah, that's about it. Just working lots. That's all.
Awesome. Councillor Evans.
Yeah, not much in July. Just been kept busy with my day job, and looking forward to 2 weeks from now when we can hang out for Family Day Saturday and cook up some hot dogs and burgers and hang out with everybody.
Cool. Thank you. Councillor Bailey.
Planning and development meetings, went to, geez, I don't know if this was this month or last month. Went to tourism meeting. I think we had another one of those. So just, we're starting to get ready to do our 2024 plan. And so Carly and has been spearheading that. So there were some really good discussions around that and, you know, in line with council's priorities and I think it'll be quite a good plan. Had a board and I actually, you probably forgot about this, feels like a million years ago, we had a good tour of Silver Sands park, really quite a nice park. I've never been in there, but some of the zoning changes and things that are coming up. We also met with Kelly and Scott on a number of different things around that as well. Yes, of course, it's like, but yeah, so it's been a busy month, but I think certainly some of the stuff that council is going to consider tonight with zoning changes, a lot of work has been put into it. A lot of work has been put into it by Councillor Bushell, talking to folks and yeah, so that'll be up for your consideration, but lots of, I think, good things. And then I guess the big thing is, and I want to do a shout out to Kelly on another thing that you'll be considering tonight is the phase development agreement. And just that's gone to planning and development and council will consider it, but the phenomenal job that you've done on that, Kelly, and the very big possibilities that there is for Sycamore. So there's been a lot of work done there. And I just wanted to say thank you for everybody that had a role in that.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Councillor Bailey. Thanks, Kelly. Councillor Beach.
Yeah, I have trouble remembering all the things, the order of the months, but attended the housing open house on July 6th and had a nice chat with the Earthright rep and that looked at the tiny homes and thought about the potential of that. That was great. Planning and development meeting on July 19th. Always learn a lot at those. And then I've been enjoying the music in the park events that started in July as well and seeing the turnout increase all the time.
Excellent. Was it good on Monday? I didn't make it.
I thought it was well attended.
Awesome. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, not much. Went to Flocky's Beach opening. Music in Mark on Monday. It was great. Not canceled. That was nice. And yeah, that's about it. I went to the open house, housing. That was quite well attended. And that's about it.
Good, thank you. I as well I was at Flocky's unveiling of Flocky Beach as well. And it was well attended and as I mentioned, they did set the pace in Sycamoose for our hockey kids and the talent that's come out of here since. So it was a good event. And I went to Canada Day, of course. And this coming up week, meeting with John and Ronan Kelly. This week we got a tour at Spot Scene coming up. The CSRD meeting didn't have a lot that would impact us, but we do have something that's going to impact us that I'd like to discuss now, maybe make a recommendation. And that is the hospital, the Shuswap hospital, I think it's. So they have been in dire straits since 2006 with finances, money allocated to them. And something has always come up. So they're doing patchwork repairs. The doc that presented is talking about the ICU being shut down so that they will have to transport patients to Vernon or to Kelowna because of financing and Interior Health not recognizing that this money has been allocated or the need to improve our hospital. That's a hospital that impacts all of us. It's our closest hospital. So I would like to make a recommendation that council write a letter to Interior Health or Ministry that we are in support of the Shuswap Hospital getting its funding and the community that it supports is huge and it's critical at this point in time as our populations grow. So we do want to keep our healthcare, as much of our healthcare as we possibly can. So I think it's really imperative that we support it. And I would encourage everyone, every local, to also send letters in support of funding for the hospital as well. it just seems to get, and I haven't sat on the hospital board for very long or been part of the CSRD board for very long. However, I do find that I'm feeling that it's being pushed back, and for no apparent, no really good reasons other than there's money that needs to go somewhere else. But if the money's been allocated, the money needs to stay allocated and not shoved off to somewhere else. So that's a recommendation that I would like to go ahead.
I just want to ask, so is it for money for the ICU?
It's money for the entire hospital. They've patched together a lot of ducting, you know, and perhaps we can do some research on the hospital and what their funding was for and money allocated that they're still missing. But in this particular case, it's become so critical that the ICU, because of venting and mostly not staff, they've got more than enough staff. They've got a healthy group of docs and a healthy group of nurses. Their facilities falling apart is basically it. So I'd like to make a recommendation that we send out a letter. And Councillor Bushel seconds. All in favor? Carried. And then, yeah, okay. The other thing I wanted to mention was that the watershed info session is going to be held on August, Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to say August the 15th at the Recreation Center. Correct. And this is just an information session to let residents know exactly what the watershed counselor provides to our community, what sort of research they do, because there will be a vote on a parcel tax, which we historically have been paying, but now it's become I want to say up for renewal.
It's expired.
It's expired for 5 years. So after 5 years. So I encourage all of our community to get informed and educate themselves on the services that they provide. Okay. We have gallery time. So go ahead, Deb, take it away.
Just wanted to do a real quick update because we've got our pickleball tournament this week. And as Darryl said, the pickleball courts are done. And I just wanted to give you guys a quick update too. So in 2 years, we've tripled our memberships and we've tripled site visits. And we're expecting that those are going to be even higher. What we're hearing from people like John who work in these is that they've never seen, you know, like to utilize so much. So I just again want to thank council. I think that one was a home run. We are seeing tennis players still there too. It's just the utilization is just like and we're full for our competitive tournament, not full for the recreational or like lower level, but that's not surprising when people are in that lower level. The tournament seems competitive, right? So, but the competitive, we've been maxed out from almost the moment we pulled the trigger and set it up. So
awesome. Excellent. Do we have anyone online? No? Go ahead, Brian.
Is ownership of the arena by Sickles can be on? We're up for discussion at this meeting that you attend next week.
Yeah, you know what? There'll probably be a bit of discussion about it. It's us own, and there's good and bad. Us owning it is a huge financial impact, and we better be ready for that, you know? So I think the discussion has been had several times, and I think we've kind of been, okay, let's just leave it for now and continue the way it is. But there's always that possibility, I guess. But it would be definitely a community. It would be a community decision because it would be a community tax impact. Yeah. Anyone else? All right. We're going to adjourn this meeting. Recommendation of the committee of the whole meeting for July 26, 2023 be adjourned, the time being 2:30. Councillor Beach, Councillor Rich, all in favor? Carried. We're done. Thanks, guys. Thanks for being here.
That's fine.